Hi, thank you for joining me today. My name is Jerry Newman, and I'm a graduate student at the College of St. Scholastica in the Health Informatics program. This is my presentation of my final project for my Human Factors and Usability class under Professor Scott Lee Eichenwald. Usability testing on the MediTech EHR. Today, we will be reviewing the following content compiled from the usability testing I conducted as part of my final project. We will be reviewing the background, the purpose of the study, the participants selected, the methods used, results and recommendations, and conclusions and priorities. For 7 weeks, we performed tasks and learned about the MediTech EHR as part of the AHIMA Academy virtual lab. Special access was required to log into the service, and use of the EHR required installation of the Citrix receiver. As part of the final project, we were asked to develop usability testing for an administrative function in the EHR and report recommendations based on the study findings. Based on this project task, I generated the purpose of the study, which is as follows. The purpose of this study is to assess deficiency in delinquency reporting functions within the MediTech EHR to identify ease of use of the EHR and its administrative functions. The intent is to provide recommendations for improved usability of the EHR. The function choice was based on the importance to the revenue cycle and accuracy of the record. Deficiency reporting and delinquency counts impact the speed at which billing can be processed and payment received. An incomplete record cannot be billed, and delinquent records can impact accreditation and quality documentation reviews. Three participants were utilized for this study from people personally known to me based on availability and willingness to participate. I had a very limited window of when I would be able to work with study participants, and so all of the participants were available and able to complete this study task on Sunday, March 4th, 2018. Participants' ages ranged between 19 and 44 years old. Each participant had over a decade of experience in using computers for schoolwork, entertainment, and business functions. None of the participants have ever used any EHR before this study. They were each familiar with the EHR as a patient. The methods for the study included 6 basic tests. First, determining what to test. So I reviewed all of the study tasks from the EHR to determine the functions. And in this instance, chose a function that is near and dear to me from services that I currently do in my work environment. Then I determined the usability testing methods that I would be using. I picked 2 methods. One was a think aloud process, and the other was a system usability scale. I then developed the materials for this research study, creating an introduction, consent forms for the participants to sign, a process, function process that the participants would all use, as well as marking up the system usability scale for the participants to be able to complete upon uh, their final step of their usability function. I then determined the testing location, which was done in the office of my residential home, and with my own personal laptop, which is a two-in-one laptop with touch screen, an add-on mouse, and definitely a large amount of memory and storage space with a Wi-Fi connection. We set up the test environment and ran a test run on the process to ensure that it did function and that the environment would be quiet. I was able to actually set up a private office and be able to view the participants through a window in a door connecting to another room, and was able to determine then that I would not interfere with the participants unless they stopped talking out loud. Next, I conducted the study. We were able to provide the participants with individual sheets of paper with the process. Once they completed the process and reported the correct answer, that terminated their actual task portion of the study. They were then provided with the standard usability scale surveys to complete. And upon collection of that information and that all of the components were completed, we then proceeded into exit interview, where I was able to question and get more detailed answers. And finally, I was able to compile the data using a think aloud protocol analysis and scoring standards of the SUS, which were obtained from online sources in order to be able to score and interpret the information. The results were actually quite interesting based on the participants and their computer experience. A total of 53 minutes and 35 seconds of video and audio was captured. SUS completion and exit interviews represented 23 minutes and 25 seconds of the audio and video recording. The longest recording for a participant was 21 minutes and 30 seconds, and the shortest was 13:59. The participant with the longest recording also experienced the most difficulties with the system interface. Converting the text to a script that could be used to compare, we were able to obtain 102 lines of text that were usable. What we did is we removed from that line count any lines that were specifically listed in the process where the participant repeated verbatim. And so in the end, 102 lines of text were available to be used, 71 lines total for task-related items, 31 for exit interviews. Additionally, under referral analysis, which showed the biggest information, participants referred to action categories, navigation categories, and value categories as their top three referral categories, representing 77.61% of the line counts in this analysis. Participants were given a SUS survey to complete out, and the results are reported here. 10 questions, excuse me, 10 questions were documented, and each was able to provide answers for all of them. It is interesting in the scale of reviewing this information that participant 2, who once again had the most problems with the interface, did appear to have the low score, with their score contribution being a 16, whereas the other 2 participants had the same score contribution. Overall, the average usability score was 55. Based on scoring scales, anything below a 68 is considered below average usability. It was interesting to note that while these do not represent percentages, but rather represent percentiles, that you could almost do a comparison on a through F grading scale, and the idea that a 68 would be considered a D. So in this instance, a 55 as an average usability score would be basically an F for this EHR. On the exit interview, the participants were asked questions on clarifications regarding their individual reactions during the studies. All 3 participants expressed frustration with the interface in 53.3% of the exit comments. Decreased visibility was referenced in their exit question responses 26.7% of the time. So based on the data that was compiled and reviewed, we were able to collect a list of observations, any inferred meanings, and recommendations, sometimes utilizing direct comments from the participants during the exit interview, and in other instances, utilizing the information based on inference. These classifications appeared to come through with 3 distinct classifications related to appearance of the EHR, using the interface, and task functionality. Under appearance of the EHR, users were distracted by the screen colors and text sizes. Recommendations were made advising to use more neutral color or to provide options at the first screen to change the color to something more usable. Text sizing seemed to be of a concern, and no easy adjustment was identified. Finally, comments were made that the main page had a lot of unused space that only served for the menus to fold out, and participants stated they would rather have seen icons to get to the appropriate task sections. Under using the interface, participants expressed concern that the new windows opened up and there was nothing clearly stated indicating that all previous windows must be exited before choosing a new function. In fact, one participant seemed excessively frustrated during the exit interview that she had been clicking on multiple screens to do the process and couldn't do anything to work. So she had to retrace her steps back to where she had been to find the screen to realize that she needed to click cancel or X to exit out the screen. The process seemed to be inconsistent with her computer current experience on how multiple window screens would normally function. Final category is task functionality. Under task functionality, users felt there were easier ways to perform the tasks, whether it was through shortcut icons to standard functions or through interactive reporting that would allow them to dig deeper into the data without having to exit out and start all over. All the recommendations have been compiled, and the following conclusions and priorities have been generated. The recommendations have been categorized under three different categories. The first being visibility and access. These are considered top priority, low complexity corrections that will make the biggest difference in the EHR for the users. These items include allowing users to customize their screen colors and font sizes, to clearly labeling the screens. The next recommendation category is inconsistent screens and responses. This is a high priority item, but it is expected to take more time due to potential build modifications that might be needed. Screens need to be consistent throughout and have all the same menus in the same locations. Some screens did not contain the menu items and confused the users. Furthermore, screens need to all open in individual windows or all open in the same window to reduce user fatigue in locating exit options or determining appropriate screens for the functions. In the end, the recommendation is that all windows should open up in one screen and not multiple screens. And the final category revolves around better use of space and functions. Menu items should be moved to more readily recognizable locations to promote more efficient use. Participants found menus on the left side and on the right side, depending on where they were in the task process, and most were looking at the top hand portion of the screen or the left side of the screen. So moving menu items to a more common place would provide a more fluid functioning in the EHR. Additionally, icons should be used more often, and shortcuts to common functions should be in place of menu items. And the final item of recommendation was interactive reporting, which would allow the elimination of steps to obtain common information and improve user performance. These are considered low priority items. They would definitely be of high complexity and would potentially require possible redesigns and significant process and common task connection research. In the end, these recommendations can reduce frustration and improve the EHR usability for future users. Here's a listing of the references I used during the research and write-up of this study. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for watching and listening.